Thanks everybody for joining this session, How to Tell a Successful Circular Story That Sticks. I'm joined here with two women who are very well versed in the world of circularity and storytelling. Devin Giles from International Paper and Mike Kuiper from McDonough Innovation. I'm Mike Hauer, Managing Director of Sustainability and Social Impact at Think Parallax, and we're a branding and communications agency specializing in sustainability and social impact. So before we kick this off, just going to tell you a little bit about, since we only have about 25 minutes, we're going to try to keep this kind of like a cafe style conversation. So we're not going to have time for Q&A from the audience, but feel free to drop questions into the chat and also to reach out to either myself or anyone else here directly through the Hopin messaging app if you would like to connect after. Other than that, we'll kick it off. So circularity is a term that's become a bit of a buzzword in sustainability circles in recent years. It's definitely risen to prominence since I started covering this space about 8 years ago. And a little bit about my background as well, as I've been currently on the consulting side of sustainability communication, but I've also been a reporter for GreenBiz and other publications, writing about circularity, talking to a lot of different types of companies and how they're communicating it. And really, I've noticed in the last probably year or two, really circularity reaching ahead, which is probably why there's a conference devoted just to circularity now. But there's still a lot of challenges around it. One of the most important challenges is communication, because it still remains a topic that even within our industry is often difficult to communicate amongst ourselves, and much less to other stakeholders, whether it be externally like customers or internally employees. And throughout the conversations this week and through other conversations we've been having with people focused on circularity, we've noticed that one of the most commonly recognized barriers to scaling circularity is really the engagement part of communicating it to different stakeholders. Because if people don't understand what it is, we're probably not going to be able to implement it. So the goal today is really to talk about this from a high level and also kind of get a little more granular by looking both at the corporate side and also externally across different industries. So before we jump into the questions, I'd love for Devin and Tamaya to introduce themselves. So Devin, would you like to go first?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Yes. So I'm Devin Giles, a sustainability project lead at International Paper. So my primary function at International Paper is to sort of lead sustainability strategies across our business. I do have direct responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions and sort of circular economy initiatives, as well as our corporate reporting and ESG disclosure. Background, I have an MBA from Penn State, where I focused in sustainability and strategic leadership. And I've been working at International Paper for a little over 2 years, plus 2 to 3 if you count my internship there during my MBA. So International Paper is a leading producer of renewable fiber-based packaging, pulp and paper products. So we make corrugate boxes, you make paper, regular old printer paper, as the name of our company would indicate, and then we make pulp, which is a sort of a super absorbent fiber-based product. So we are excited to be on this call today, and we're definitely sort of in the midst of this challenge around communicating circularity to the everyday employee. So happy to be here.
Tamaya?
Thanks, Devin. Hi, everyone. I'm Tamaya Kuiper. I'm the project director at, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I coming clear? Perfect. Yes, I'm the project director here at McDonough Innovation. And McDonough Innovation is led by Bill McDonough, one of my personal heroes, who has been articulating the vision of Cradle to Cradle and circular economy for over 30 years. My background is in industrial engineering. So when I read his book, it's really changed how I look at industrial engineering in industry and everything else. So through McDonough Innovation, what we do is we provide targeted ideas, product concepts, and solutions that are really aligned with cradle-to-cradle framework and circular economy. Not only that, we also work closely with MBDC, C2C accredited assessor, and William McDonough and Partners, which is the architecture firm, using the cradle-to-cradle design approach. So within all these 3 different companies, we cover circularity ambitions at really different scales. So you see companies engaging in circularity from molecules to product by certifying their products through MBDC, to buildings, communities, cities through WMP, the architecture firm, and to the more planet visionary storytelling version by Bill McDonough advising CEOs and companies through McDonough Innovation.
Awesome. Thanks for those great introductions. So yeah, we're actually doing great on time. Perfect. That never happens. We'll dive right into the question. So just to kick this off, wanted to kind of circle back, no pun intended, to this concept that circularity has become a buzzword. It's so overused now that often it loses its meaning, kind of like sustainability in general. I know this is a broader problem with our industry. Like even the word sustainability isn't a great word, and none of us can really figure out, and I'm a word guy and I can't figure it out, how do we talk about these complex problems and solutions? So I'd love to hear how would each of you explain circularity to maybe someone on the street, someone who has zero background in this? How would you like in 30 seconds explain to them, or could you? So Devin, you want to go first?
Sure. I don't know if I could do it in 30 seconds, but I do think, in terms of how we try to articulate it and introduce the concept of circular economy or circularity to our employees, sort of is describing this system of sort of beyond recycling. So, going into, I think, Ellen MacArthur Foundation always describes moving from the take, make, waste, a sort of type of economy into a regenerative, renewative, circular economy. So, I think for our employees, people really understand the concept of recycling. We do have a recycling business, so it's sort of, one, it's ingrained into sort of the very foundation of our company. But, we understand that, things can be reused and recycled, and sort of moving beyond that, how do we as a whole, so create, from the design of a product all the way through to the end of its life, create a system that reclaims, reuses, recycles as much as we can throughout the product or the life of that product.
That's a great explanation. That's probably the most distinct explanation I've heard. But the fact that we can't do this in 30 seconds, I think, really shows us the problems we're facing, right?
Yeah, sir.
Because you probably only have, if you're talking to somebody, mostly you maybe have 30 seconds to get their attention, and then they're gone. So we're not going to solve that problem today. I wish we could, but we're going to get at it. So, Tamai, would you like to explain how you would explain it?
Yes, I would build up on that, and I would definitely say thinking about safe and healthy, because if we are circulating unhealthy things, we are not making any good, right? We need to keep the waste equals food concept in mind, and that's something that Bill McDonough have been championing for years now, and really thinking about, am I designing this product or service for the biological and technical cycles? Is it something, when it's going back to these cycles, is it going to go back to soil safely? Can it go back to industry safely? Is it healthy for me? But not only that, let's go one step further. Let's say, how can my product do good in the world? Let's not just do less bad, but how can this company, this product, this service really create good in the world? How can we really create the best product that we could ever create by engaging with all different stakeholders?
Yeah, I think you guys
just say add safe and healthy materials.
Yeah. No, I think you guys both touched on a really important issues there, and I think I had a few roundtable discussions this week on the same topic, and some of the things that came up was like we've been so ingrained, like even with recycling, even if you start with recycling, it's still built in this take, make, waste idea of like, all right, I bought this product, it's recyclable, but then instead of throwing it in the trash bin, I throw it in the recycle bin and I forget about it and I don't think about what happens to it. And we've noticed, this year with a lot of headlines around how, a lot of, at least in the US, a lot of things that we throw in the recycle bin don't necessarily get recycled. And so there's a lot of challenges around that. So yeah, I think you guys have a very good point there. Maybe starting with just awareness around like where do things come from, like what goes into making them, and not just once you've bought it, but after you're done with it, where does it go? And that could be a starting point. So Tamai, I remember we talked about this before this, and I actually couldn't believe I couldn't tell the difference between this. But cradle to cradle is a term that Bill McDonough coined many years ago. I'm sure many people listening in here have read his book on the topic. Can you explain to us what's the difference between cradle to cradle and circular economy? Because it's often used interchangeably. So I'd love to hear, like, how would you explain that difference?
I will do my best, because one thing that I learned from Bill, among a million different things, is that don't think of circular economy as a linear economy in a circle, right? Circular economy seems like an easier concept to understand because, oh, it's an economy in a circle. No, that is not necessarily right. It doesn't mean, like I said, again, if there are unhealthy materials that we are circulating, that's not something that we are doing good for the planet. So circular economy actually comes from cradle to cradle. So I don't know how our attendees know the cradle concept. So cradle to cradle concept really starts with material health. So we're looking at the safety of the materials and then material reutilization. And that's where circular economy comes in. And we are also considering renewable energy, water stewardship, and social fairness. So when we are talking about circular economy, it's so very important to think of these 5 different concepts and characteristics and really understand, first, we need to be safe and healthy in order to circulate these materials, but then also think about renewable energy, water stewardship, and social fairness. That's really interesting because
even me, yeah. When I think of circularity, I'm mainly thinking of materials, not energy, or it almost sounds like you're talking about just this corporate sustainability writ large there. Like, do you think circularity?
Well, right, almost, because.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, would you be so bold as to say, could we replace even how, like, corporate sustainability, the concept of that, with circularity, or would it not cover everything that we're trying to deal with? Maybe at least on the environment.
I wouldn't say circular economy, but I would say cradle to cradle concept, because cradle to cradle concept really goes beyond environment and really goes beyond material health. Right. Again, it is everything else.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. So the next question is aimed at both of you guys. So it's really focused on the external communications piece. I know we've sort of touched on this already, but for example, investors are. I have a 4-month-old golden retriever puppy that's like at my feet right now. So if you can hear scratching, that's a dog. Don't be alarmed. Investors this year in particular are really showing more interest in ESG and what companies are doing on that front. Circularity is obviously a great opportunity for companies to shine and show that they're excelling or working on ESG issues. So what do you consider to be some of the biggest challenges for communicating circularity externally? So it could be investors, policymakers, customers, any of those audiences. So whichever one of you wants to jump in first.
Sure, I can start. I think for International Paper, being a forest products company, to us and to sort of our employees, the very foundation of sustainable forestry and responsible forestry, is ingrained. We understand that that's the foundation of our sort of circularity or circular economy argument as a company. But, I think that telling and communicating that piece and being able to talk about, lead this circular economy conversation with a conversation around how fundamental, responsible forestry is not only to our business, but, to the world. I think that is something that we've sort of had a challenge with, because as you said, Mike, at the beginning, there's all of these different sort of buckets of sustainability or circularity or responsible forestry, and they're all sort of segmented and they're not separate. It's all with the circular economy. I like to think of it as sort of the interconnection between all of the different elements of sustainability of an organization. So I think, being able to communicate that responsible forestry aspect is really important. keeping forests as forests and as sort of the benefits of responsible forestry, but then being able to transition into then what is that sort of product offering, the value of our product, and then sort of what's the use of the product, end of life, and how is it recovered. And I think that making those connections and steps along the way is something that is challenging, and you only have so much sort of time to communicate that, or is everyone going to read the 100-page global citizenship report that we put out every year? That might describe it really well, but how do we do it succinctly?
Very fair points. Tamai?
And I would say it all starts from trying to have circular economy or sustainable strategies as ad hoc projects, right? I think that's the problem, where the problem comes from. Once we think of more holistically and really think about circularity within all different departments, then even before we are trying to communicate it to external stakeholders, we are trying to communicate it internally. So I think that's something that's really, really important is, are you multilingual? Meaning, are you speaking the language of different departments? Are you able to speak finance? Are you able to speak with your sales representatives, your designers, your chemists, all across the board? Are you able to really understand the circular economy concept yourself? And are you able to translate it and speak to it and really help these different departments across your company understand what circular economy is and how they are contributing, and really empower them to talk about circular economy within their own terms? So that's the first thing. And the second step is the external. So once you really embed circular economy within your organization, it becomes like a really authentic storytelling through your products, through everything that you do.
That's such a great segue. My next question was really aimed at internally. External, that's definitely a problem. But if you don't have your own house in order, you're probably not going to do a good job externally. So that's something I definitely seen, working, with different companies across industries. The internal piece can be the biggest hurdle, even just getting your C-suite to get what it means. I mean, it's hard enough. You're already trying to explain to them the value of what corporate sustainability is, and here you are throwing another buzzword at them. Much less your sales teams and so forth. So Devin, I know International Paper has done a lot of great work on the internal piece. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the experiences you guys have had, like some of the challenges and how you've overcome them?
Yeah, certainly. I think internally, as I sort of spoke to earlier, the first hurdle has been sort of demystifying circular economy and really sort of getting, getting our employees to understand that it's not, sort of a big, complicated, thing that they're not involved in, that actually, the day-to-day things that they might already be doing, looking at life cycle impacts of products are part of the circular economy and are part of our circularity and sort of renewable solutions goal. I think, one of the biggest things that has been helpful for IP is we have a very, well-known and sort of foundational vision, which is sort of around 5 key elements. And one of those elements, is innovative products. And so this category of innovative products is where our, Vision 2030 renewable solutions, circularity goal sits. So, everybody at IP knows that we have a vision and a mission, that it's sort of foundational, around forests. It's all set around forests, as I spoke to earlier. And then we've got innovative products, sustainable operations, investing in people and communities. We are sort of set the conversation around circularity within sort of our elements of our vision. Then I think that opens the conversation to, okay, this is something we're doing. We just need to sort of connect it to the label of circularity or renewable solutions or, whatever it might be. And I think that the second element of that is understanding that it's not just sort of our own internal actions, that we are talking about a value chain, which is sort of how IP talks about it. But we're talking about the before, it gets to IP, and then the after it leaves IP. Right. So really connecting the dots across each of those is key.
Yeah. And in that same vein, this came up actually during the other conversations we had this week. Do we even need to get hung up on the word circular? Like, as long as we're talking about the concepts behind it, it's kind of goes back to the bigger conversation about sustainability comms. Like, if we're getting the actions as the result of what we're communicating that we want, do we even need to use this language? Like, are there ways to talk about circularity without talking about, like, don't talk about Fight Club type stuff? Like, you don't need to talk about circularity. Have you found, like, are there different ways you can talk about circularity internally, externally, where you don't actually even have to mention the word circular?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add just a little bit here. I think talking about circularity has actually opened up the conversation, to talk about, so we have circularity as sort of this, defined concept. We've got a renewable solutions goal. And then, as I said earlier, there are all these actions that other people within our company are doing. Defining it as circularity has created sort of this room for all of those actions to be grouped together across business groups and functional groups. So while I think that, being sort of Fight Club style, not talking about circularity, I think sort of the opposite. I think talking about it has given us that sort of avenue to define it and label it and then bring it together. So, now we have sort of an enterprise-wide circularity or renewable solutions task team that would be thinking about those things. Now, hopefully the next step from there is to not talk about circularity and everybody sort of knows what it is. But I think we need to sort of get to the point where everyone knows what it is first.
Kamai, anything to add to that?
Yes, I think, like Devin said, we definitely need to define it, what it means for the company, right? If you're not defining what circularity means for our company, if you're not defining what's safe, healthy, and circular for our company, then it's going to be really, really difficult to communicate what we are doing. So definitely defining and setting goals and being really disciplined towards those goals. So for example, when we set those circular economy goals, or again, sustainability goals, or Cradle to Cradle, when we are using Cradle to Cradle, even the certification, any project that we are doing within our organization, if they're not meeting those goals that we set for us, they should move forward. So I want to give like an example from Herman Miller, which is one of the first chairs, Mirror Chair, has been Cradle to Cradle certified. And how they communicated it internally was really embedding, shifting that certification from a design exercise to a really core business strategy. So it's really easier to communicate internally and externally.
Awesome. I'm just want to acknowledge these great comments. Some people are throwing out some really great ideas about what we could call circularity. So I might have to go through this later and list here. We got about 313 people brainstorming right now, so that could be useful. Yeah, so if you have any ideas, put them in the comments. Oh, and I'm going to be writing a piece in GreenBiz covering this topic. So if anyone out there has insights, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'd love to connect with you. Great. So we have only 2 minutes left. I wish we had way more time, but just want to leave you with a kind of one more question, kind of more forward thinking. So let's think, 10 years in the future, maybe even further, what will be the state of circularity itself, but also how we talk about it. And Devin, you made a good point earlier about, like, we got to get people to get the concept, we have to let it soak in, and then we can go elsewhere. But where do you see, or where do you think it should be? And do you think that we're on track, or what needs to change to get to where we need to be? So Devin, if you'd like to go first.
I can start off. So I think, and I hope that in 10 years we are in the circularity Fight Club status, that we're not talking about circularity. That circularity has been defined, and we understand what it means, what the circular economy is, and that's just part of what we are doing as a company every day. So I think in 10 years, if everything goes right, and for International Paper, if we achieve all of our Vision 2030 goals, and we are able to sort of set forward and start off the next 10 years of goals with circularity ingrained, then circular economy or circularity doesn't have to be defined because it's already part of what you're doing. You're making all those decisions, making renewable, products, or, all of your products are recyclable, or whatever that means to your organization. That's part of your everyday business attitude. And so circularity is not a thing anymore because it's sort of ingrained. It's already part of the organization.
I really love that. I almost have nothing to add except safe and healthy. So if there's anything that these the attendees and everyone else who's watching can take from the circularity, because I'm also watching the chat going, and someone asked, is circularity just circling materials? Again, going back to what I said in the beginning, materials need to be safe and healthy first. If we are circling unhealthy materials, we are not doing anyone any good. So definitely really embedding circularity within every department in our organization, and really having that authentic embedded circular strategy. And then again, we don't even need to talk about circularity because it's in everything that we do.
Awesome. Great. Well, we're at time, and I don't want to get on Green Biz naughty list by going over. But just the key takeaway here, I mean, this is great. I mean, it's kind of showing, I feel like we need to have a broader discussion on this. So hopefully we can continue the future conferences, have more discussions on this topic. That really, to change the conversation, we really need to have a conversation both in our organizations and also as an industry to really align on what we mean by circularity. So we're all speaking the same language, and then once we're on the same page, we'll do a better job of changing, the actual broader thinking around it. So everybody, thanks for joining. I just put my email in the chat. If you want to email me directly any follow-up questions, I can direct them to Maya and Devin and try to get back to you. And also, as I mentioned, I'm going to be writing a piece for Green Biz on this topic from this conference. So if you have any interesting insights, always looking for input into my articles. So thanks again for joining. Thanks to Maya and Evan for your time. Great insights. And yeah, everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Have a good one. Everyone stay